Hello and welcome back, everybody. We are inside the Browns beat here on the OBR streaming network, your home for all of the best Cleveland Browns coverage in all of Ohio and all of Cleveland. And we are so excited to be back. It's been a couple weeks since we've been with you. Fred, you got rejuvenated a little bit as you were off on a trip. So you're looking 10 years younger, looking like you are ready to go for a Browns offseason, buddy.
I am. I mean, it's good to get away. Don't think I've been away that long in a long time, but it was good to just kind of reconnect with family and now we're into big time of the year. It's where hope springs eternal. It's where the moves are made. Everybody's anxious to see, what the Browns will do, obviously in the draft, but free agency comes first. And just get a few words by Andrew Berry, about being aggressive, but then being hyper aggressive next year, So what does that mean? And so a lot of that stuff to talk about. But I mean, right now, yeah, this is exciting time as they anticipate what they're going to do and getting ready, to go into the 2026 season.
Well, we're going to dive into all of it. Again, we've got 2 weeks of stuff worth to cover here on Inside the Browns Beat. But just a couple things before we get into all of it. First of all, you'll see the QR code on the screen. Go ahead and get your phone out, scan that QR code. And if you are not already subscribed to the OBR, that'll take you right over to the OBR.com where you can subscribe and be a part of the, again, oldest, largest Browns coverage site in all of the land. Plus, if you've never really explored the OBR, it's a blast. It's a very community-driven place with all the message boards and all that. And so it's really the place to be if you're a Browns fan. So get that QR code scanned and get over there and make sure you hit subscribe. Again, a lot for us to catch up on, but one main element of this show, and this will be a little bit of an homage. Again, we're going to try some new things with this show as it goes on, but a little bit of an homage to what Fred, you, and Barry did on this on OBR Weekly for a long time. But we really want audience participation here tonight. We want to know what things you heard when you heard from Todd Monken today, Andrew Barry this week, things you're thinking about the combine, the offseason, the draft, all of it. So we welcome you in. We love the comments are already going. Sancho Bermuda and Fumble 13, and you guys are all in the comments. But get your questions, get your comments in there, and we will address those as the show goes on as well, as we want you to be a part of the show as much as we are. All right, so Fred, there's a lot. Again, we talked about just a lot to kind of cover, a lot to dive into, but I almost feel like we should kind of start working backwards. And the thing of the day today was Todd Monken addressing the media at the combine. And so, Fred, just maybe give us some highlights, some things you heard out of Todd Monken, some things that were interesting. I know everybody was talking about how he was talking about Shedeur Sanders and the quarterbacks and all that stuff, but what were the things that really stood out to you hearing Todd Monken, which, by the way, I loved. There's something about him. He's going to win you over. I don't know if he's going to win a lot of football games. That remains to be seen, but he's just going to win a lot of people over. I loved him up there at the combine, just in his like teal hoodie and his baseball cap. Just, yep, I'm the coach of the Browns. All right, let's talk. So what'd you hear out of Todd Monken that perked your ears up a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I wrote about it on the front page of the OBR.com, free to read. Summarizes everything, the notes as well as, but I think the headline, is that he was asked right off the bat about Shedeur Sanders and what he sees in the tape of what he's watched. He says that you can see he has elite playmaking ability. And I think that would catch everybody's attention. Just that he knows it's in there, and now he knows it's up to him to get that out of him on a consistent basis. Obviously, the little bit we saw the same type of glimpses, but we didn't see, elite play after play after play on a consistent basis. So, and then what he said about Deshaun Watson, he said that, and I don't know, I know you don't want to hear about this guy, but I honestly think that he legitimately is going to have a chance to be the starting quarterback this year, depending on what he does in the offseason. But he said he approaches it like a teacher. You don't walk into the room before you give out the test and give out the grades. You see what you have, you give the tests, and it doesn't matter, boy, girl, race, and he listed a lot of things you can see in the quote in the story. But I thought that was pretty good, is that it's kind of coming in with a clean slate. You got some preconceived notions, I'm sure he has. And and then they basically, I've been doing this long enough, and even though he's a new coach, they all hit about we could do this, we could do that. We could draft a quarterback. We could not draft a quarterback. We could find one internally on the roster or outside. So we could trade, we could free agent or draft. You cover all the bases. Then no matter, it's kind of like what I would say too, because then I can say, I said that. You can find a tape somewhere that I said that. No, but on the side, he talked, most people that aren't familiar, they do a formal interview with the coach and the general manager. And then at least with the Browns and most teams, they then go off to the side with the local reporters, and he was pretty eloquent as far as no F bombs or cursing,
Aw.
on the side, we had some after his initial one. He came in the room and talked to us. Well, today, I think there was a count going how many words he said off color that wouldn't have been appropriate. So that shows me he knows when to say things and when not to say things. And so, I think that was the takeaway. The big one today was the quarterbacks because that's what everybody wants to know. He was asked a lot about coaching and different things there, but that to me was the biggest takeaway, and that he tried to talk Joe Batonio into committing a couple weeks ago when he was in Berea, and he couldn't do it at that time. So I don't know if Joel's this deep into it, if he's not sure what he's going to do, but I would think it seems to be going towards retirement. I was guess right now, but those are some of the things. And then we talked to Andrew Barry yesterday.
Well, we'll go to some of the Barry comments in a little bit, but let's pull it back and let's give a couple opinions, Fred, on this quarterback situation. And I know I'll give you my opinion because you see it. Sancho says it in the comments here. Medical advancements surprise me. I'm not counting out quarterback Watson. I'm not really counting out quarterback Watson because of the injuries, because you see guys bounce back from crazy injuries and play great, play fine. But you haven't seen this guy play fine in 6 years. Like the moments, the glimmers that he gave us as Browns fans that maybe he could be good were so few and far between. I mean, so few and far between that it isn't just the injuries. It's the injuries. It's the fact that he's going to be 31 when the season starts. And you kind of bring that up. I feel like I bring that up, Fred, and then people come at me and be like, well, Tom Brady played until he was this old, and Peyton Manning played until he was this old, and Drew Brees played until... That isn't normal. Those are all outliers. All of them are outliers. When you look at just the general history of the NFL, the majority of quarterbacks hit 30 and start getting worse.
Yeah.
And he's been worse for 6 years, and now he's 31 off of a few major injuries. There's so many things that go against it, and not the least of which, Fred, is that I don't understand what the Browns would gain by playing him at this point. Like, I don't understand. There's nothing about playing him. People keep saying, well, you can't go in. You're really going to give it to Shedeur? Yeah, because at least I have something to gain by playing him. Because maybe he's good, or maybe he's not. But I'm going to gain the knowledge of he's either good with Todd Monken or he's not. I'm going to get some understanding of that. I'm gaining nothing with Deshaun Watson at this point.
Yeah, well, to your point is that he's talked about him, that he saw elite playmaking ability in Shedeur. And if you get that out of him, that's what you have for a future on a rookie contract. Deshaun Watson, to your point, the last time he played the full season was 2020 when he passed for 4,800 yards and was like arguably a top 5, top 3 quarterback in the NFL that year. When I proposed to you, and this is my theory, there's obviously everything else going on, but he was such an athletic dude that he could just outrun and scramble around, kind of street ball, almost like Lamar Jackson, until somebody got open and he got him the ball. And then we talked about an ACL, that like his rookie year or something.
Right.
Then he had the, now back-to-back Achilles, but he had the shoulder. His athleticism has to have taken a hit, no pun intended. And maybe before he could escape and get out. And when he got to the Browns, he might have just been, from not playing or whatever, just a little step slower, and it was night and day. That was his game was taken away. That's kind of way I see it. Besides in his head, a lot of it brought on by himself. We all know, we don't need to relitigate, but you suck, we hate you, you're the worst human being in the world, that's got to affect you. that's got to affect you, as you know, in your mind and your
Sure.
confidence and all that. So yeah, I agree with you. What good does it do? I was joking with somebody today. I said, can you imagine you put him out there and he lights it up and his contract's up and he demands, a major contract, but I'm just saying that's what would happen. And it would mean nothing that we give you 5 years, 230 guaranteed, and you did nothing for 4 of the 5 years. But I don't expect that to happen. I'm just saying that Monken's coming in here with a different notion if they really hired him to be the coach. And he might be able to unlock something that hadn't happened under Kevin Stefanski. Kevin Stefanski didn't know what to do with Watson. We all know he was kind of thrust on him. And so I don't know what they're going to do. But if you go outside, I can see the answer is taken care of. But if you decide to keep with what you have, I think you have basically written Shedeur Sanders off, because to me, he's not a number 2 quarterback. You're going to hear all year, when you're going to put him in, why don't you go with him or whatever. I agree. You build up everything. If you cannot find a legitimate upgrade, you go with Sanders and see what you have there. And then next year, all points are on the quarterback, because now you have hopefully fixed the offense, everything but the quarterback.
Listen, I'm going to tell you, I every last egg in my basket for the upcoming season, the 2026 NFL season, is in Shedeur Sanders' basket. That for me, and it's not because I think he's just going to miraculously become the franchise quarterback. I don't know whether he can do that or not, and I wouldn't bet on it after what I saw. But here's the thing. I keep hearing all these arguments for, well, who's the next Sam Darnold? You're going to go out and get Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold went to a team that was ready to win a Super Bowl, and he just was pretty good on that team. And that's why it worked that way. It's why these situations have worked out the way they've worked out with some of these guys that are like retreads that have gone to these other places. Well, those teams have been ready to win. Sam Darnold comes to the Cleveland Browns last year, and we would have been talking about cutting him this year.
He's probably the same Sam Darnold that was with the Jets and so forth. And so you're exactly right. It's the situation.
Like, for me, this team doesn't call for a retread quarterback. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because I don't think you're going to just plug him in and watch him be really good. And this team certainly doesn't call for Deshaun Watson. So what I think, in my opinion, what I think the Browns should do is find a veteran, cheap quarterback that you don't really anticipate having to play a lot. And sure, you want a guy that could be somewhat competitive, but here's the other thing. How good do we want them to be this year if we don't think they're going to be all that good, right? So
here's your point that you accomplish in 2 ways by playing Sanders. If he is not the guy and he's not very good, and they'd probably be 2-15 and have a chance to get the number 1 pick in the draft, he's played himself off the consideration, and now you are in position to get the top quarterback in the draft next year.
Right.
That's where these decisions are so important, because otherwise, I agree with the retread thing. If you think a guy like a Malik Willis is the answer, you're committing. He is your franchise quarterback. You're not bringing in him to just like compete with anybody.
100%.
And then you're like, okay. And same way with the trade. It just depends on their point of view. Like a lot of people, if you look at the stats on a Kyler Murray, if they are moving on from him and they're just cutting him, his stats have been very good. When I looked at him, I haven't really watched him, but it's like, okay, is that the direction you go with a relatively young guy and build around that? Try to win now and the future. And that's where it's, you kind of want, when Barry's saying we're probably going to be hyper aggressive a year away from, meaning in 27 at this time, that means they're not really setting up to trying to get that one guy to win this year. So, I mean, you don't want to tank. Nobody ever wants. But think about now. What did it gain you to get to beat the Bengals and the Steelers to end the season? It was good for Shedeur, but you lost. If you wanted Francisco Mendoza, you lost out on it because of that.
Well, the Raiders would have made sure they lost that last game too, though.
Well,
it just again for me, it's do the smartest thing. I get that Deshaun's going to be part of the team, so okay, all right, be part of the team. My only concern with him is that I think he's going to like look good in practice, and that frightens the hell out of me because then they're going to put him on the field and he's going to be terrible. Put Shedeur out there.
Let me say one thing on that. I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah.
I watched him at Greenbrier for 2 years. I watched him in training camp off season. The guy looks awesome. I could not believe that he played like that. That's the concern,
Fred. That's the concern.
And that's what I'm saying. Todd Monken's looking at this guy fresh going, he's way here. And the other two out here are here.
And so then week one happens.
So is he going into this going, look, let's just try to lose? I don't think so. He's 60 years old. He knows he could get fired after, be one and done if they go 2-15, even if that was the ultimate plan. So to your point, that's the only reason I caution people. If he's out there, he's going to look good, I think.
At practice. Here's the thing. The reason I kind of even got into this is that I just think from what we're hearing out of Andrew Berry and for what I think would be the smartest way forward for the team, whether it's not about Shedeur. This isn't about Shedeur Sanders. Other than he's the guy that's on the roster now that I think might have a shot at being a quarterback. Who they bring in, this is my opinion, Fred, but I think who they bring in is going to be way more in the vein of like Kenny Pickett last year. That kind of a player than maybe a guy they think is going to be the next like Sam Darnold turnaround. It's not something that they're ready for at this point. And so all you're going to do is bring in this guy that hasn't succeeded at other places and not set him up to succeed here. It's not a great formula. So in my opinion, I think it's much more in the vein of Kenny Pickett. I'm not saying it is Kenny Pickett, but look, Ty Sox in the comments, Snoop Huntley. I think it's going to be a player more like that, that is just going to be a veteran presence in the room than them going out and getting Kyler Murray. Malik Willis, you're 100% right. Everybody loves to talk about him, but the reports are now that there's teams getting ready to pay him $30 million a year. You've just made him your franchise quarterback if that's what you're going to do. So I don't know. I just think from a perspective of trying to make sure the fans have as little of a letdown as possible if they're expecting some big splash. Now, again, they could come out when the league year starts that they go for Malik Willis. I just don't see it happening, Fred.
It is. Yeah. I mean, and that's it. Andrew Berry likes to make splash signings and so forth. And last year, I mean, he said that going to be more aggressive than last year. Well, let me clear that up. Is that last year, that's a low bar. They signed Malik Collins, and Malik Collins was a great signing, but he was not an unrestricted free agent to start. He wasn't like he was cut by the 49ers in a salary cap cost cutting after they signed another guy. And so you're like, okay, that was pretty much, I mean, they signed the Joe Tryon, Shoyinka.
Right.
Malik Collins was the only starting player they brought in. And so that being said, I wouldn't expect too much. Although in the offensive line, I would think that would be where he would make the splash. Either the big one is if he went all in to get Linderbaum and spent the money there, or a guard, maybe a tackle, but one of the offensive linemen.
Yeah. Just a couple questions coming through. Again, we talked about the combine being this week. So, keep your eye on all the stuff coming out of there. I have to tell you, I've said this for years. It's my least favorite event on any sporting calendar on the planet is the combine. The way people adjust their thinking on players, not based on the last 2, 3, 4 years of watching them play in college, but by how fast they ran in a straight line, just drives me up a wall.
And
But it
shirts
is
and
happening.
T-shirts.
Yeah, I do
That's
think it's great. I think it's great for the interviews. I think it's great, for obviously for the teams to get to know the players a little bit, but like the testing and all that. Okay. But Fumble wants to know this. This is a question for you, Fred. Fumble 13 in the comments says, I'm retired and wondering if Fred thinks a trip to next year's combine is worth it. It's a 5-hour drive. Get to hang out in Indianapolis, which is a nicer city than what some people give it credit for. It's a nice little town, some fun things to do. I don't know, Fred, would you say, yeah, Fumble, go check out the combine?
Yeah, it just depends on what you want. I'll tell you, I'm not there this year. This first year in many years I haven't went. Part of it was the big with technology now. The interviews with Monken, Barry, head coach, well, all the players too. I can sit here, get other things done, and basically it's a destination place for agents, coaches, and the media. The media, if I was there, we'd be out to dinner somewhere, all the local media, get together, go out and that kind of stuff. And it's just coming off the vacation, snowstorm, decide not to go. So it's easier to do the show from here than it is from there. So with that being said, Indianapolis, I really do like the city. Very clean, a lot of things to do, a lot of good food downtown. I've never really watched the players workout. They now let us go in and watch it in the stadium where we weren't allowed before. You had to get a lottery ticket to get in. But yeah, I mean, if you're looking for underwear Olympics, that's it. To me, the value was, when they had the number 1 picks to go over there and to look in the face, with the 5 quarterbacks, Mayfield and Rosen and Darnold and Josh Allen, be
right
10 feet from them and just look in their eye and make assessments. And the year with Garrett and even last year thinking it was going to be Travis Hunter, and Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward and that for interviews. It's great, get the videos and so forth. As far as a fan, I don't know. The NFL, is master showman and they do it up. I can hear the fans all screaming in wherever they're at watching the different things. So yeah, I just, my stage of life, I'm like, I don't need the glitz and glamour, staying up late and doing all that kind of stuff.
Oh, come on. Your life is filled with glitz and glamour, Fred. You know that.
Yeah, but it's more in a early regular hours.
Also, we talked about a couple comments here. First of all, I think maybe just joining the show, Wisely Judy in the comments said, can you comment on the quarterback situation and the coach? You just got to rewind. You got to, when the show's over, just go back and watch it from the start. And we did that. So you can check that out. But stick with us here as we move along to other things. Also, just while we were talking about Todd Monken and his press conferences, Ty Sox, and I feel like he was smiling when he typed this out, said, do you expect Monken pressers to be more entertaining than Kevin Stefanski pressers, Fred?
Yeah, absolutely. Already has. I mean, in his introductory presser, and like I said, he did one on the side. He came into the media room and just off the record talked with us, and he said more in that off the record than Stefanski probably did in 5-6 years. And we had off the record with him. And today, I think it's refreshing because he really just kind of speaks what he's thinking. He's going to be elegant and he'll get better. Or I don't expect him to just be like Freddie Kitchens and just say stuff he shouldn't even say, like give out information that hurts him. But I don't understand why you can't be honest. It'll be interesting to see how he handles injuries, because Stefanski kind of took the approach of the Bill Belichick started it. You'd see a bone sticking out of the guy's leg and you go, oh my goodness, how's so-and-so? Wow. And he goes, well, his leg's a little sore, and you're like, Well, that's a little obvious. How long is he going to be out? Oh, he's day to day, and don't insult our intelligence. Why can't you just tell us, some things? But to your point, I think Monken will be refreshing from that aspect, but ultimately he's got to win, or it's not gonna. You can get by with not saying anything when you win, but if you lose, it makes it hard to justify. It's like the secretive nature of the Browns and Kevin Stefanski. I mean, okay, we'd have a joke and say, "What, you were 3-14? If you wouldn't have told us that one thing, you might only been 2-15." Stuff like that. It's like, how do you justify 3 wins and 5 wins with all your secrecy?
Yeah, 100%. Let's go to yesterday, Fred, because we heard again from Todd Monken today. And again, like you said, a lot of what the conversation, people talking about after Monken's presser was about the quarterbacks. We hit on that. Andrew Berry spoke to the press yesterday at the start of the combine, and just kind of the same question, just some takeaways from that. Obviously, there was a little bit more that went into his thinking on how he's building the roster. You brought up his aggressiveness and then hyper aggressiveness. You brought up the Chicago Bears and the way they've built their team. And he gave an update on a player, and it's really the first time we've heard the Browns give an update on this player. So, what were the things that really stood out to you?
Well, yeah, yesterday I wrote about it because I think that is what is going to be the key to the offseason. We all know they need weapons. We know they need defense or offense. And you would almost make a case that all your attention should be on the offense, but especially the offensive line. Especially not knowing about Bitonio. They'll know when free agency starts, whether they need to replace 5 or 4 or how many on the offensive line. But he said that a good model for him is the way the Bears did it last year. Think about that. Caleb Williams, as a rookie, was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. They last offseason totally overhauled their offensive line, and I think everybody would admit Caleb Williams looked like a different quarterback. Some of that was first year to second year, but that offensive line protected him, and he took them to the playoffs. And so the point is, it can be done overhauling in 1 year. And the way he did it, I'm talking the Bears. He mentioned the general manager, Ryan Poles. He made 2 trades. He acquired Joe Thuney, who might be the best guard in the NFL from the Chiefs, and Jonah Jackson, 2 starters. He signed, I think, the center, Drew Dahlman, as a free agent. And they drafted Ozzie Trapillo, a tackle, in the second round. And another one, I don't know if it was Darnell Wright or something like that. Whatever position but he was internal. He was already on the team. So what that means to me, I can see him. They're not going to sign 5 free agents. They're not going to trade for 5 offensive linemen. They're not going to draft 5 offensive linemen. It's going to be a mixed bag. If they decide at 6, they're going to go get one of them tackles, then I can see them signing a center like Linderbaum or somebody go in big at center or guard, trade for a guard. And so I could see him. He likes to make trades. I could see them finding an overpriced guard under contract and trading for him or tackle. And so when you look at that all the way around, I think that it's the biggest thing is evaluating what you have. You drafted Luke Whippler to be your replacement center. Do they think he is? You drafted Zach Zinter in the 3rd round to be a starting guard to replace Bitonio or Teller. Do they think he is? They drafted DeJuan Jones to be one of those guys on the offensive line. Do they still think he is, or is he too injury prone? So whether they go get 5 guys, I don't know. But I would use my draft if you feel good about one of those tackles or 2 of those tackles or 2 tackles and a guard. 2 or 3 of my high picks to get those addressed if you can't come out of free agency with guys. And Andrew Berry likes to trade for or sign free agents that are like the Linderbaum coming off their first rookie contract, like
Yeah.
they're 25, 26. He doesn't like to get the 29, 30, 31-year-olds. And he already said they probably won't sign 30-something free agents because they don't feel they're one player away. So I think keep an eye on the offensive line. I think they could be big right off the bat in that market in free agency, maybe targeting one or two, but also the trade route. And then it all complements into the draft. If they leave themselves dry at tackles, you can kind of bet they're going for tackles in the draft or vice versa or whatever.
Well, and I think it's also a very fair thing to have everybody reset for a minute and realize they may not build this offensive line in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
So you may see a guy, maybe they bring back Tevin Jenkins because there were moments with Tevin Jenkins that he played all right. We know for sure Wyatt Teller's not going to be back. We know for sure. We don't know anything. We don't know about Bitonio yet, although things are not pointing in the direction that he'll be back. I cannot imagine there's no reason to even really talk about Ethan Posich because even if they brought him back for some reason, he wouldn't be ready to play until the end of the season. And again, Jack Conklin's the other one out there where, I think there's guys that could be back. Maybe they feel like they could get Jack Conklin on a cheap because of his injury history, and they just feel like, hey, let's take a chance and put him out there because we don't have a lot of other options. I think you're probably going to see DeJuan Jones on the offensive line. I think a lot of people are expecting that you're going to go into next year. There's going to be 5 brand new starters across the offensive line. I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think and maybe starters isn't the right thing, but 5 brand new faces that weren't here last year. I think you're probably going to see a couple of the same faces if they can keep Whippler healthy. Maybe he's your starting center because they didn't want to pay $24 million for Linderbaum or whatever he's going to garner. Again, Tevin Jenkins could just be a cheap deal kind of guy that they bring back. They went from having the most expensive offensive line in football to then having to deal with all of them basically coming to a head all at one time. And it's going to be a bit of a process. I feel like my whole philosophy for this entire show, Fred, is just talking to fans, talking to the people that are consuming this and just reminding this could be a process. Because I don't know if I want this. I was thinking about this all day, Fred, because really smart football mind, Lance Reisland, a guy that I've known for a while, made a post today that said nothing matters until you get your offensive line squared away. They need to do that first before they do anything else. They've got to get their offensive line squared away. And I thought about it all day because I agree to a point, but we've had it here in Cleveland. We've had some great offensive lines here in Cleveland, but if there's not anything else going on around that offensive line, then you're just wasting years of those players on the offensive line. So it needs to be more balanced than that. Yes, you need to address this offensive line. You got to get it better, and you got to do it as fast as you can. But you need weapons too. You need, there's a lot of things they need to address, and they need to start addressing multiple areas this offseason.
Yeah, and that's to your point is that you're never going to say you're not trying to win, but you're trying to set yourself up for next season is what it sounds. As favorable as their schedule is this coming year, you could make the right moves and be competitive and maybe even win the division because it's in flux. But with that said, is it realistic? And that's where it comes down. The interior guys, other than Linderbaum, there's a lot of them like guards. This is a year to need guards that are projected as free agents ranked higher than Teller, maybe around the where Bitonio is now in his career, but they would be a lot less expensive, but more than important, younger. And so the draft is your best bet. I mean, if you get to the point, and I own the stud from Penn State, a guard, I wouldn't be opposed to taking him if he was still available, if you don't like the tackles available or whatever. But I really think with, what they did last year with the first 2 picks, on defense to use those first three picks and laser focus on offensive line and getting a wide receiver out of there. So, but it's anything you can do in free agency will help you, I think, in the draft, because you would not have to be drafting a lineman or something out of need. It'd be nice if you had one or two of those positions taken care of. But yeah, DeJuan Jones, I think he said he's going to be in the mix to start. And
he's got to be.
And I read somewhere that the O-line coach, it might have been Lane had that one seemed to lose like 30 pounds. And, he lost a lot last year. And, maybe they see him, maybe he could be a guard. Maybe he'd be better inside. I don't know, as big as he is, but to your point with Conklin, and some of these guys could be fallback options, but they ran it back last year thinking going back to the wide zone would be the answer. But there was a number of things in play, but it just didn't work. So you really have to get younger and get cheaper. But I would like to see him use blue chips. It very well could be like the 2007 draft, Those are uninspiring, Joe Thomas might be the best draft pick the Browns ever made in the first round, in the expansion era. First ballot Hall of Famer, third pick in the draft, and everybody's like, Joe Thomas. It's like that didn't get anybody excited except the big boys. So, that could be what it would be. It could be a trade down type thing. But I do think it's about acquiring assets. Kind of what you saw last year with the rookies. They played the whole year, and it looks like you hit on 3, 4, or 5 of them. And if they can do that this year with the offensive side of it, especially, then you put yourself in great position moving forward because you got a core of 10, 12 first, second year guys that can play.
Well, and Fred, like we're not even at the 2026 NFL draft yet, and we're talking about, well, you want to be in position in the 2027 draft. And I think it kind of goes back to what we were talking about at quarterback. They start filling some of these holes. They address the offensive line, and they do it in ways. Ty Sox, I think, made such a great point in the comments. I remember they picked this kid up from Detroit. They put him on waivers when he was injured, like week 17. He's an undrafted kid out of Florida, and I don't remember how to say his name, Guakun, whatever it is. But it could be a guy like that pops up, and all of a sudden he's competing for a job at the center position. But again, if you build this in a certain way where you at least begin the process of really addressing that offensive line, maybe you don't get all 5 spots all pro ready now. But maybe you get 3 spots good and ready on that offensive line, and you grab one of the top wide receivers in the draft or 2 really good wide receivers or whatever you're going to do, then the conversation can turn to what a lot of people are talking about for this year, which next year could be, Fred, okay, now maybe we won some games this year because we improved the roster and we don't have the first pick and we're not in position to get a great quarterback. Now, maybe that's when we start talking about, all right, where's that retread guy that we think could come be our version of Sam Darnold? Where's that guy going to come from? Next year would be the year to be able to do that. You just got to start it now.
Well, when you do it would be much more attractive position for the Browns or a destination place to bring people into that right now. I don't know, other than the money, it's not that attractive for a free agent to come to the Browns to be the quarterback because you don't have the weapons. You don't have a lot of things. Next year, you would have the Deshaun Watson contract off the books. And now you have a whole new world of money and opportunity. And as you said, if you could add 2 or 3 weapons to this offense, top flight. I think Jerry Jeudy ultimately is better as a number 2 receiver anyway. You need a blue chip stud, number 1 guy, and you have those 2 with Fannin, Judkins, and all of a sudden a great offensive line. Like you said, you could put a quarterback in the cockpit, and that was the year Derek Anderson took off. Phil Savage always talked about it.
Yes.
Is he just dropped him into the cockpit with all those weapons. I mean, they had some weapons in 2007.
Yeah.
And, Derek Anderson was the beneficiary, went to the Pro Bowl. That was about it with him. You get yourself set up and you see what you have in Sanders. Hopefully he does take off. But if he doesn't, or he's just kind of middle of the road, then you go get that franchise quarterback and instead of chasing the other. So it's just, that's where some of these decisions they have to make in the next couple of weeks are very important, because if they do go show their hand and go all in to try to get a quarterback for this year, well, they could be committing again. I think maybe getting your cart before the horse.
Yes.
Get these other positions. Cause if you do that, then you can't, then you're bringing back the Whipplers and the Zinters and that's it. So it's a balance all the way around. And, when you look at what Barry, he's good at manipulating words. So you really don't know, but I don't think they're going to be too big aggressive other than find one thing. Like I said, Linderbaum's going to probably be, if he gets to free agency, he's going to be in a bidding war as well. And the Browns might have to say, he's totally the guy. We talked to the guy from the Ravens who wasn't really sold that he was, he wasn't worth, the type of money that he might be getting. But that really, if the Browns think he is, that's what they do. Otherwise, you use that money and get 2 or 3 like guards and, in a swing tackle or somebody in that position. So those are the things that are, it's kind of exciting, but don't expect too much. The biggest thing I would say would be a pinpoint strike in a trade for a wide receiver or a signing in an offensive lineman, something like that. Might not be the guy at the top of the list, because the guys at the top of the list usually get way over market value. It's usually more of those under the radar guys that I can see Andrew Berry going after, like a Malik Collins last year.
Well, and again, if you want to think of the trade market, that's where Andrew Berry's done some of his best work. Think of the moves he's made. I'll always look back at the Amari Cooper trade, a 5th-round pick for Amari Cooper. That worked out, and so you could see something like that as well. We got a question.
Tyson Campbell.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, what a move that was. We got another question. This is going to go a little bit more towards the draft, but Fumble 13 asked this way long ago, and now I'm going to bring it up. Fumble 13 still thinks a trade down from 6 is a possibility. What do you think, guys? I've got an opinion on this, but I'll get yours first, Fred.
I think it's very much in play. That's what Andrew Berry, that's in his wheelhouse. I thought they would keep the pick last year because I guess I was kind of convinced that if they didn't get Ward, they would get Sanders. But the real possibility was get the two-way player, Travis Hunter, when he talked about getting a Otani and, they could do, the best on both sides. And they won that trade. I think that would only reinforce if he can move down. Now, I do not want him to get out where you don't get a blue chip player. If you could go down 2 or 3 spots again and pick up a 2nd-round pick or something like that, okay. I mean, you think about last year, even up for the trade, basically losing Hunter, but getting Graham, Judkins, and Sampson and a 1st-round pick. I mean, you'd take that any time. So if there's somebody that's, and this is where it comes in, they're sitting there at 6 and Caleb Downs is there, who I love, who isn't probably the top need for this team, and somebody really wants him and says, we'll give you a 2nd-round pick to move up 2 spots or whatever. I don't know all the value. I can see that definitely happening, but they're not going to give it away. It just depends on how they evaluate these guys. If they think Carnell Tate's the guy, you take Carnell Tate if he's there. Or if they think Mekhi Lemon's the guy, you take him if he's there. or Fano or whatever. You don't want to get yourself out of range that you don't get a wide receiver or an offensive tackle, by going too far down, the list. So, yeah, I really do think he likes to do that. Everything he said or hinted at kind of points that direction to me, that we're not going to, he didn't sound like we're going for it this year, like they're trying to acquire as many. And if you can get an extra pick and throw another body in there, maybe you get another offensive lineman with that pick. Now you've overloaded it. And now you got a lot to throw against the wall and hope you found, your wide receiver and 2 or 3 offensive linemen in the top 3 or 4 picks in this year's draft.
Now, listen, here's my thing on the trade down scenario, Fred. Do I think it's possible? Of course I do. I think especially there's just something about having Kansas City sitting there at 9 because they're never in the top 10. Something about having them sitting there at 9 and maybe a guy like Jeremiah Love, who I can imagine they would love, or even like a Caleb Downs or something like that slides that they think could help them. I could see Kansas City being like, yeah, heck yeah, we'll pull the trigger because we're going to be good again next year. So I certainly could see it. I also just think there's some guys that could be there for the Browns. And again, we don't know who's going to be there, obviously. But knowing now a little bit, knowing how Todd Monken likes to run his stuff and knowing some of the players, like I think I've said over and over again, you've got a chance to get a number 1 wide receiver. That's the direction I want to go. But I think it could be very likely that Todd Monken could absolutely fall in love with Spencer Fano at 6. He's starting to become the guy that nobody wants to talk about in the draft because he's the guy that everybody's talked about all year as being like the top lineman that's going into the draft. And then other guys have popped up and everybody wants to talk about Monroe Freeling now, who is amazing, by the way, or Mauingoa or whoever else they want to talk about. But Spencer Fano, 6'6", 305 pounds or whatever he is, but he runs a 4.9 40 and he is an expert run blocker in like the wide zone schemes, because we're still going to see a lot of that wide zone stuff coming from Todd Monken. That's how he likes to play it. That's where Spencer Fano is elite, is getting out, stretching the defense, making them move horizontally and getting out in front of a screen pass or whatever. He's a guy that in my head, I feel like that's a guy that this team could just absolutely fall in love with, knowing how they're going to want to run the offense. So I think you get to 6, and if you've fallen in love with that guy and go, boom, that's my left tackle. If Todd Monken's going, that is my left tackle, you take him. If they're looking at Mekhi Lemon going, that's Amon-Ra St. Brown, number 2, Amon-Ra St. Brown 2, then you take him. So I don't think you go in thinking you're going to trade down, but let's say some of those guys come off the board early and then you're sitting there going, okay, we still got some guys we like, but if we could pick up some draft capital, then you go ahead and do it. I don't mind. I've said this from the jump. I do not mind where the Browns are in this draft. I don't mind that they're not tempted with some kind of weird second quarterback at the top. I like being at 6 and being where they're at. It puts them in a pretty good spot to build their roster the way they need to.
Well, they do, and I agree, but so much of this is a puzzle, and a lot of it's going to be what they do in free agency. If they sign, guards and centers, but don't touch the tackle, you think, okay, that's pointing obvious. There's not that many free agent tackles. You hear the Green Bay left tackle, but he's pretty good, but because he's the top guy, he's going to probably get a boatload. So is that the way you're going to do it? Or are you going to trade for somebody or whatever? And if some of those are addressed, then you say, okay, they're thinking the draft is these positions that they've let go, and so I agree. That's what I said with the Joe Thomas, nobody, it's the most practical pick. Phil Savage told us that basically in no uncertain terms when we did the pre-draft. He's the only general manager that's ever really given it away. He said, I don't know how anybody could pass Joe Thomas if he's there, and they took him at 3, and most of these guys talk around, like last year, Barry, talked up Hunter so much and then didn't want him, or traded him away. So, yeah, it's a game, but it's going to depend on what they do March, in the free agency to a big extent. And then when, and he keeps getting asked, what are you going to do? Are you going to trade down? It really is. They had an idea, and they did have a trade in place with Jacksonville if such a things happened, and
Right.
that it didn't happen till the night of it. And I'm sure they'll have the same scenarios. If Fano's not there, or if this guy's not there, or whatever, we'll trade. Or if this guy is there, we won't trade, or whatever.
Right.
But I mean, I said this, I think, on this show, but I wrote about it way back at the beginning of football season after watching the Buckeyes. I mean, I'm more of a fan with the Buckeyes than I am like Browns is more of, serious and objective, try to be. I said, man, with them 2 picks this year, I'd take Downs and Tate right now. Sign me up, and I didn't really know they were both going to be top 5 or top 10 guys at the time. Obviously, they couldn't get them both now in most likely scenarios, but say Downs is there. Would you take him if he's head and shoulders the best guy in the draft?
Fred, I made this point and people freaked out. And I get it. I get it. But I want to make sure I say this very clearly. Because every year we seem to throw around some guy's generational. That's the word, right? Generational. That's not what you can't be generational if there's somebody generational every year. But from some of the reports from some of the scouts, Fred, saying that they've never scouted a better safety than Caleb Downs. Like I think Dane Brugler said, he asked some scouts who they compare him to, and they say nobody. We've never scouted anybody this good. That truly is, if you truly feel like this is the comparison I'm making. I'm not saying if you think he's going to be a Pro Bowl, not Pro Bowl is useless. Even just like a 1 or 2 time All Pro, that's not what I'm talking about. When I say this statement, I mean, if you think drafting Caleb Downs, if this is your evaluation, your scouting department, your general manager, and your coaches, if you think drafting Caleb Downs is the equivalent of drafting Ed Reed again,
I was just going to say, or Ed Reed,
then I'm doing it. Even with the Browns, who need offensive line and wide receivers, and their defense is already. I'm making that all day, every day, because he will win you games. Ed Reed won games for the Baltimore Ravens. And we can still put there's free agency and trades and 8 other draft picks that they're going to have at their disposal. 100%. Do I go into the draft thinking, man, they got to come away with Caleb Downs? No, but if that's how you have that dude evaluated, all day, every day, I'm making that pick.
Yeah, and that, they've always said best player available, if that's what it is. But then you're sitting there and other teams are thinking the same thing. And the Cowboys come up, or some team says, well, because if not, you'll probably see him sitting with the Bengals, and that's what always happens. And then you're playing him twice a year. So, yeah, that would be a tough call because we know how offensive challenged they are. But that would be transforming your defense.
I love this comment. Levi Dupero 1 in the comments. The draft is for finding greatness. Free agency, that trade market we're talking about, is for filling holes. Now, in the draft, you can do a little bit of both. But I agree with this for the most part. You will find your next greatest players in the draft. And if you get to that spot at 6, Fred, and it's Caleb Downs, and it's Spencer Fano, and it's Mekhi Lemon, and Jordan Tyson, and those guys are all on the board, and you've got Caleb Downs way up here, and Spencer Fano is the next one, take Caleb Downs, go ahead and draft whatever offensive lineman you want to draft at 24 and go from there.
Yeah.
That would be my opinion on it.
I kind of agree, because I, for one, say they got the defense returning. I have some questions because of the change in coach, that there could be, it's not going to be exactly the same as the way Schwartz ran it. Could be better, could be worse. But you can't just totally assume they're going to be the best defense again just because they got the same 10 or 11 starters back. And so keep reinforcing and make sure that, because Grant Delpit's good, but if Downs is what they think, he's going to be better than him long term. And Ronnie Hickman is just a guy right now. And I know they're different positions, but Monken is supposed to be about, coaching and putting guys in position to be successful. I think if you got two great safeties in Delpit and Downs, you can find a way to figure out how to play them back there.
Yeah, and listen, and there are going to be some question marks, and this will be just the last thing before we head out of the show for tonight. Remember, 9:00, Garage Beers. We're going to talk some Olympics and some Cavs and Guardians and all that stuff. But Fred, again, one of the other things we heard from Andrew Berry was it was kind of shocking because we had not heard anything the whole time, but for the first time, really officially casting doubt on any future playing for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. And it was surprising to hear Andrew Berry say anything about it, to be honest, the way that they have just off limits that conversation. But, again, the health of JOK is the most important thing, but now it feels like it's a serious doubt that JOK is able to lace him up again. We don't know what kind of contract Devin Bush has played himself into. So all this to say, when we have this conversation, the defense could need a couple things here or there. They still should be really good. You're still going to have a lot of really good players out there, but we don't know who's going to be playing next to Carson Schlesinger. If they can bring Devin Bush back, I'm sure they would want to. But yeah, there's some other things. I mean, there's some things that could be addressed as well. What were your thoughts when you heard Andrew Berry bring up JOK?
Well, yeah, he was asked because obviously our friend Mary Kay put that out. He has not told the team, according to Lane, anything. You kind of in the back of your mind, at least I felt that was going to be the outcome. But you just think of what if he was playing his best, he was ascending, he was the one hit Berry had, made the Pro Bowl from his first 5 drafts. And now you look at Schlesinger and you would have had 2 guys like that. It's just very unfortunate. As a human being, I look at it and say, if that was me, knowing that when I make those tackles for a living, would I actually ever want to go out there and try to make a tackle again? Right. In your mind, I've been with players that played with the Browns that were told, if you keep playing, you have a narrowed spinal cord now because of all the years of football. You are risking being a paraplegic or being paralyzed for life. And I'm not talking about one major hit, just the wrong direction. And that player decided to go and take one more offer, and he failed the physical. And thank the Lord he failed the physical, because he should never went back out there. And so I don't know the medical, if anybody's cleared him or if that's the case. But even if he was cleared, I don't know how you have the mindset to go out there and when you tackle for a living to try to make a tackle on a Derrick Henry or any NFL running back again. I mean, I just can't see, how you can do that. But he did say a couple other things besides okay. So the Bush thing, I would think he'd be a top priority. I don't know where that's going to land, but Martin Emerson was one of the curious ones to me. I was led to believe all along, okay, you got Campbell now. You got 3 good corners. Sure, coming off an Achilles, a cornerback, how's his speed? But the first part of the answer, Berry said he's coming along great in his rehab, but his contract situation is unsettled. Right. I don't know if he was trying to put pressure on Emerson or them to say, hey, you're coming off a major injury. We stuck with you, work with us. Or if Emerson's demands are already like exorbitant or something because he's a free agent. So I figured he would be back at least. I wouldn't think anybody else would be going after him coming off an Achilles, and he'd get even a 1-year prove-it deal with the Browns type of thing. So that was a little concerning to me. Because you need more than 2 cornerbacks. We saw that anytime Ward or Campbell went off the field, they're torching Miles Harden and Cameron Mitchell before they got rid of him. So you need more corners, and I thought they had a pretty good mix with those three. So we'll see there. But that was the most glaring to me. But the JOK thing, yeah, you just think of what could have. It'd be like adding another first round pick to this lineup if he returned. And with Emerson, like another top veteran player, like two free agents right there in Emerson and that weren't here last year. So
it's heartbreaking because JOK was so again, no, there's nothing official, and maybe there's other word that comes out. I just feel like they had to have heard something at some point for Andrew Berry to have actually said what he said. But if it did go down like that, it is to use a reference from one of our other teams in Cleveland. It will always and forever be the Browns version of Grady Sizemore, right? With the Indians back in the day of what if he would have just stayed healthy, and if JOK would have just been healthy. So again, hopefully he seems like he's doing okay. That's the important thing. But it would be a bummer to not have him out there. And again, I think all this goes into this offseason. I know the focus is on the offense and the offensive line and the weapons and all that, but I think a lot of this is leading us to, you might see him take a couple defensive players here or there because there's going to be some holes for them to fill. And I think it's important for everybody to remember that. Fred, it's been 2 weeks. So why don't you give us the last word before we get out of here?
Well, I just think, as far as we'll see how the free agency, that's the anticipation. We're going to do a lot of time. In fact, next week will be, right on the doorstep of free agency, which starts for all practical purposes on March 9th. It's really official on the 11th, but all the signings come out on Monday at noon when it's official. They can tamper. And so that'll be it. I'm working on that right now, what the Browns should do, what I see. All focus to me right now is free agency trades. And then the draft it's fun to talk about, but a lot of it's going to be what they do here in free agency and trades. And then we'll have a good direction where the focus will be in the draft. So exciting time all the way around. So it's good to be back. Full steam ahead.
Yeah, it's good to be back for sure. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Browns Beat. Again, just a quick reminder, get over to theobr.com and hit subscribe if you haven't done so, so that you can be a part of the Orange and Brown Report and all the coverage for the Cleveland Browns that it brings you all day, every day. And I know they're really planning some big stuff for the OBR, so make sure you're tuned in to everything going OBR there. Again, our last order of business is just the thank yous. It starts with the OBR for hosting us. And then it goes to all of you that joined us in the comments. We missed you over the last couple weeks, but it was good to be back. And you guys definitely gave us some good topics to talk about, had some great questions and some funny stuff out there in the comments as well. So we appreciate you. We love the fact that you joined us, and we'll be back at the same time next week. That's going to do it for Inside the Browns Beat. For Fred Greetham, I am Michael Keefe. Go follow the show on Twitter at BrownsBeatOBR. And until next week, as always, go Browns.
See you. Thank you.